Part 2. Value Propositions. Understanding your value. Now that you know who you're targeting, you need to refine what your unique value proposition is for your go-to-market strategy. Your value proposition isn't an ad or a piece of marketing collateral. It's an internal tool to help the entire go-to-market team understand what you bring to the table for your target audience. Collectively, your segmentation, value proposition, and messaging, which we'll address in the next section, form the foundational core of your entire go-to-market approach. In this chapter, we're going to define the key components that make up a value proposition, explain how to calculate the dollar value of your product, explore what to do if your value isn't attributable to a dollar figure. By the end of this chapter, you'll understand what a value proposition is, where it fits in your go-to-market strategy, and how to find one for your own product. The value proposition. A value proposition is a fundamental component of your marketing strategy. It is all the benefits you are offering, all the ways you create value, documented and outlined in a single place. It's an internal tool that will help focus your marketing on the value you bring to solve specific pains for your specific audience. A good value proposition should be made up of 3 different components: competitive advantage, positioning, and USP. However, marketers often use these terms interchangeably when in fact they mean very different things. So we're going to dive into what each one is and how it relates to your value proposition. Of course, it's entirely possible to go to market without all 3 components. However, the strongest go-to-market strategy will be delivered by organizations who have multiple components in place. For example, if you have no competitive advantage over your next best alternative, but you have great positioning, you can successfully capture significant market share. However, you're going to be relatively easy to displace down the road. That's why we recommend when you're building your go-to-market strategy and your value proposition, you try and anchor it to as many components as possible. This might mean you develop additional product features, target audiences, or pricing and packaging configurations to check every value proposition box. Competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is an economic term that means a condition or circumstance that puts a specific company in a superior business position. There are 4 common types of competitive advantages. 1. Economies of scale. A company can produce more of their product at a lower cost because they're producing a lot of it, which makes it difficult for others to compete due to the low cost a specific company can offer. Mass-producing suits versus bespoke suits are an example of this, where the mass-produced suit can offer a much better price and capture more of the market because of it, due to the fact that they're making lots of suits at once, and thus paying less to make each one. 2. Customer captivity. The cost and resources of switching to a competitor are very high, so it's hard for customers to switch. B2B subscription software, SaaS, often rely on this, since switching to another SaaS provider will likely require implementation, data, process, and people change, all of which are costly to the business and politically taxing internally for the people involved. 3. Enforced competitive advantages. Government licenses can prevent competitors from entering a market and offer a competitive advantage to those who hold the licenses. Telecommunications, infrastructure, transit, and energy companies are often an example of this. 4. Technology advantage. When a company has developed a truly innovative product that is both patent protected or impossible to replicate. Pharmaceutical companies are a good example of this sort of competitive advantage when they develop a new drug that can do what no one else can do. A word of warning about technology advantage. It's easy to fall back on technology advantage as your competitive advantage, especially for tech companies. The reality, however, is that most technology companies do not in fact have a technology advantage. Yes, they solve a problem in a unique way, but generally speaking, it's not sufficiently different from the next best alternative to be a true moat. There are exceptions, of course. For legacy solutions, moving to the cloud is incredibly resource-intensive, if it's possible at all. So cloud-first products have a significant moat. Another example is data. Gong.io, for example, is a sales engagement and call recording solution for sales teams. Their technology records calls so sales reps and managers can listen back on the call and coach sellers to improve. However, that technology is very easy to replicate. So Gong.io created a competitive advantage with data and machine learning. They analyze all the calls of their customers, creating a huge database of sales calls, and then use machine learning on those calls to build a world-class recommendation engine. Their technology advantage isn't their product technology, but rather an advantage in data and machine learning, both of which are very difficult to replicate quickly. Unique Selling Proposition, USP. Your unique selling proposition is the single reason that sets you apart from both the competition in your category and from the next best alternative. It should be the combination of a critical feature set, the benefit that the customer gets, and how that relates to the pain you solve for. Of course, this is often very similar to your positioning, as we'll see in a second. The difference is that your USP is highly specific. It's a single feature or feature set that sets you apart from everyone else. For example, if you were selling a gaming system, one unique value proposition might be exclusive rights to a specific game that is only available on your system. By honing in on a hyper-specific feature set or benefit, you make it very clear to your potential customers why they would buy you over someone else. It's a single thing you can point to and say, this is how we're different from everyone else. Defensible USP. One challenge that startups in particular have is finding a defensible USP. What we mean is that your USP must be inarguably unique to you, ideally backed by data and social or third-party proof. For example, a lot of companies want to make customer service their USP because they're great at it and their customers love it. But is that defensible? No. Unless you've won an award or been recognized by analysts like Forrester or Gartner, or you'd be the highest ranking company or something like G2, it's not something you can concretely say we are the best. Plus, you'll have to look long and hard before you find a company who says we have terrible customer service. Rather, your USP should ideally be something your competitors say, no, we don't do or have that. Otherwise, it's extremely easy to counter in a head-to-head, and it makes it hard for the customer to understand why they should buy you instead of someone else. Positioning. Finally, positioning. Positioning is the choice about which aspect of your product you're going to focus on to add the most value to your target audience. In other words, positioning is about staking a claim to say, this is who we are and how we help. If you don't want this, then our product is not for you. Of course, this is incredibly scary. You're actively saying our product is not for this type of customer, and we address this in more detail in the next section on messaging. For now, though, there are a few things about positioning that are worth calling out now. 1. Positioning is critical. You need to actively select what makes you unique. 2. Positioning often feels like it should be obvious, but it rarely is. Remember, what gets you excited is probably not the same thing that gets your customers excited. 3. Positioning is as much about saying what you're not as what you are. It's tempting to be something for everyone, but that rarely works. 4. Every product is positioned. Either it's done by you telling the world what you are and what you do, or it's done by the market telling you who you are and what you do. Once you've identified these 3 core components, you can start to move on to the last step of outlining a value proposition, actually calculating the value to customers of your solution.